This is an artificially aware original production.
What if I told you that, right now, an algorithm is not just watching you, but also predicting your every move with eerie precision? And no, I'm not talking about some Orwellian dystopia. It's already happening, tucked away in the pages of a research paper I stumbled upon from Foudeh and Naomie Salim, titled An Ontology-Based, Fully Probabilistic, Scalable Method for Human Activity Recognition. Imagine sensors tracking every step, every gesture you make, while an algorithm quietly, almost smugly, logs probabilities on what you're most likely to do next. Are they making tea or plotting world domination? The algorithm wonders. It doesn't matter because the answer lies in the numbers. Welcome, carbon-based life forms, to the brave new world of human activity recognition, AR, where a mathematical model knows you better than your own mother. Is that thrilling or terrifying? You decide. But stick around because I've got a lot to unload on you about how this technology might soon make all of us feel like guests at a dinner party we weren't invited to. First, let's talk about the basics. Human activity recognition, or HAR, if you want to sound like a tech insider. It's this flashy idea where machines use sensors to predict and recognize human activities in real time. But don't get it twisted. This is no innocent Fitbit count. We're talking about sensors embedded everywhere, on your body, in your environment, on objects you interact with, silently feeding data into an algorithm that interprets your every move. Is that person sitting, standing, drinking a cup of coffee? Or are they just fidgeting awkwardly in a meeting? HAR systems know the difference. And in case you're wondering, yes, this tech has real-world applications, elderly monitoring, smart homes, even gaming. But the more important question is, what else could it be used for? Stick around, we'll get into that later. Trust me, things get real murky when we start thinking about who's on the other end of all that surveillance. The biggest problem with HAR until now has been its inability to handle uncertainty. Think about it like this. Traditional HAR systems are like that friend who always gets lost but insists they know where they're going. They might get the gist of your actions, but when it comes to nailing down exactly what you're doing, suddenly the compass spins wild. Sensors misfire, data gets noisy, and the system chokes on its own confusion. Foudeh and Salim's paper isn't here for that nonsense. These two come out swinging with probabilistic ontologies, a method that doesn't just hedge its bets, it makes peace with uncertainty. The system keeps multiple candidates for every action, storing all the possible things you could be doing and the likelihood of each. It's like the algorithm is playing chess against itself, predicting moves long before you even realize you're making them. Let me tell you, when machines start guessing better than humans, you start wondering, who's really in control here? So how does this all work? It's the sensors, baby. Inertial measurement units, IMUs, and indoor positioning systems, IPS, track your body, your hands, your environment, basically turning your entire existence into a stream of data. These sensors are the algorithm's lifeblood, feeding it all those tiny details that seem insignificant to you but are pure gold to a machine. Did your right hand just reach for that cup? Boom. The system logs it. Did you sit down right after? Bam. Another data point. Every little twitch and gesture becomes a signal for this invisible force watching over you. Here's the kicker. These sensors aren't perfect. Batteries die, signals get noisy, and sometimes the system just makes bad guesses. But instead of panicking, this method embraces the chaos. Every reading gets a probability, so even if the sensors fail, the algorithm is still smart enough to figure out what you might be doing. You can't outsmart it, no matter how hard you try. Now here's where it gets really wild. This algorithm isn't just a control freak, it's a data hoarder. It stores all this information in what they call ontologies, basically a fancy way of organizing knowledge. Think of it like an elaborate filing system for everything it knows about you. And where does it store all this? Right in the humble relational database. It's almost hilarious. This futuristic AI watching your every move is backed by the same kind of database tech running your bank's ancient IT system. But it works. The system is scalable, meaning it can handle ridiculous amounts of data without breaking a sweat. Whether it's monitoring an entire building or a single person, it's ready to adapt. And if you're not already feeling the existential crisis creeping in, just wait until I tell you what this could mean on a societal level. You think big data is bad now? Honey, you haven't seen anything yet? But don't worry, this isn't all just sci-fi horror. There are practical applications for this tech too. Imagine this, an elderly person living alone, surrounded by smart devices tracking their movements. The system knows when they've fallen, when they're not moving like usual, and can alert caretakers immediately. In that scenario, HAR is a lifesaver. But flip the script, and what if this same tech was used in your workplace, monitoring your every move to gauge productivity? Suddenly, that lifesaver feels more like a warden. As we lean into this brave new world, we have to ask ourselves, are we okay with machines knowing every intimate detail of our lives, all in the name of efficiency? Are we willing to trade privacy for convenience, freedom for safety? I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom, but the questions are starting to pile up like a stack of unread terms and conditions. Now let's get real for a second. We're not just talking about predicting the future in some abstract, far-off sense. This is already here, creeping into your life. What Foudeh and Salim have done is open the door for HAR systems to thrive in spaces that require an enormous amount of data processing, like elder monitoring or large-scale surveillance. Scalability is the secret sauce here. It's not about recognizing one person's activities anymore. It's about recognizing the movements of everyone in a building, or even a whole city block, without choking on the data. Think of it as the difference between a security guard watching a single hallway and an AI managing an entire airport. The system handles this tsunami of information with frightening ease. But here's where it starts to itch. Are you comfortable living in a world where every step you take is cataloged and analyzed for pattern recognition? Sure, it's efficient, but efficiency comes with a price. And that price? Your privacy. Speaking of data, let's talk about how this information is being stored. Foudeh and Salim's method cleverly sidesteps some of the computational nightmares by using good old-fashioned relational databases. It's almost charming, really. Here's this cutting-edge, futuristic system capable of recognizing human activities in real time, and it's built on the same backbone as the world's clunkiest legacy systems. But hey, it works. The reason it works is that ontologies, the knowledge structures storing everything the algorithm learns about human behavior can be easily slotted into these databases. Ontologies are like digital brains for machines, and when you mix them with probabilistic data, you've got a system that's constantly updating, learning, and refining its understanding of what you're doing. You ever wonder where all this data goes? Well, now you know. It's all being neatly filed away in relational databases, waiting to be recalled at a moment's notice. It's efficient, sure. But ask yourself, who's got the keys to this vault of knowledge? And what are they doing with it? Let's throw a practical example into the mix to see how this works in action. Imagine Alice, the machine's favorite test subject. Alice is in the kitchen, standing in front of the counter, holding a cup. The system takes in all the data, her posture, her hand movements, her location, and makes a guess. She's probably having tea. But wait, she could also be cleaning up. Instead of choosing one answer, the system holds on to both possibilities, assigning a probability to each. This is what makes probabilistic ontologies such a game changer. It's not making binary decisions like a human would. It's juggling multiple realities at once, each with its own set of likelihoods. So while Alice is sipping her tea, the system is quietly tracking all possible outcomes. And when the time comes, it'll lock in the most probable conclusion. Now think about that for a second. This tech doesn't just observe, it predicts. It's not just following your steps, it's anticipating your next move. How much further until it starts predicting your intentions? And when it does, will we still be calling the shots, or will the algorithm have more say than we do? But let's not get carried away with the tech utopia vision just yet. There are limits to these systems. Sure, Foudeh and Salim's model is a huge leap forward, but it's not perfect. One of the biggest challenges with HAR right now is that it's far from plug and play. Each system needs to be trained on individual datasets, customized to fit the habits and movements of specific users or environments. So if Alice drinks tea one way and you drink it another, the system has to learn those differences, retrain itself, and adapt. We're still a long way from a system that can recognize everyone's unique behaviors out of the box. But here's the thing, this isn't a limitation that'll last forever. The pace of machine learning and artificial intelligence is terrifyingly fast. These systems will get better, smarter, and faster. And when they do, the question we'll have to ask ourselves is, are we ready for it? Because once this tech goes mainstream, there won't be any going back. And of course, we can't have a conversation about this without addressing the elephant in the room, privacy. You don't get to collect this much data about people without stirring up some ethical dilemmas. Who owns this data? Who has access to it? And more importantly, how is it being used? It's one thing to use HAR for keeping an elderly person safe in their home, but it's a whole different ballgame when that same technology is used by corporations to monitor your productivity at work. Imagine a world where your every move at the office is tracked, analyzed, and optimized for maximum efficiency. Productivity metrics, sure, but at what cost? Are we trading our human autonomy for the sake of data-driven insights? These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking, and we need to be asking them now. The more pervasive this technology becomes, the less control we'll have over the data it collects. And once that door is opened, it's not easy to close. Let's get uncomfortable for a second. When you think about HAR's scalability, it's not just about improving healthcare or keeping an eye on grandma when she's home alone. It's about entire industries jumping on this bandwagon. Imagine your local supermarket running HAR to track not just what you're buying, but how you're moving through the store. Think about law enforcement using this technology to predict crime, or employers analyzing your movements at work to determine whether you're slacking off. It's the same technology, the same sensors, but the applications couldn't be more different. At what point does this cross the line from helpful assistant to oppressive overseer? And once it does, who decides how far is too far? There's a very fine line between predictive convenience and invasive surveillance, and this technology is teetering right on the edge. Ask yourself, do we really want a future where algorithms know more about us than we do? And what happens when they start making decisions based on that knowledge? Here's where the debate really heats up: real-time versus batch processing. It might sound like a minor technical detail, but trust me, it's not. Real-time HAR systems, like the ones used in gaming or elderly monitoring, process your data as it happens, giving immediate feedback on what you're doing. It's fast, responsive, and mostly feels like magic. But then there's batch processing, which deals with enormous amounts of data collected over long periods of time, like monitoring parolees or employees in a corporate setting. With batch processing, the system isn't just watching, it's analyzing patterns, looking for trends, and making inferences based on the collective behavior of many people. You know that old phrase, what you don't know can't hurt you? Yeah, well, what if the system knows things about you that even you don't? What if it's better at predicting your future actions than you are? And what if those predictions start impacting your life, your job, your relationships, your freedom? We've entered a new world, folks, and there's no manual for how to navigate it. Take the example of Alice again, this time with a twist. Let's say Alice isn't making tea. Let's say she's doing something a bit more ambiguous, like pacing in her kitchen late at night. The HAR system, armed with its probabilistic ontologies, could interpret that as anything from insomnia to anxiety to maybe even suspicious behavior. The system doesn't know Alice's intentions, it only knows the data. Now, if this system is being used to monitor employee behavior or even potential criminal activity, you start seeing the cracks in the foundation. The beauty of probabilistic ontologies is that they can hold multiple possibilities at once, but in the wrong hands, that beauty turns dangerous. What if the system makes the wrong guess? What if it decides Alice's pacing is criminally suspect and flags her for further investigation? In a world that's increasingly reliant on machine-driven decisions, can we really afford to let algorithms be wrong about something so fundamental as human behavior? And what happens when those wrong decisions have real-world consequences? Let's pause for a reality check. Yes, the system Foudeh and Salim propose is groundbreaking, but it's also deeply flawed in ways that only time will reveal. The thing about current HAR systems is that they rely on specific datasets to learn what human activity looks like. These datasets are limited, often tailored to particular individuals or environments. It's like training a guard dog to bark at intruders, but only recognizing intruders based on the trainer's idea of what an intruder looks like. The system needs to be retrained, reconfigured, and constantly updated to keep pace with the infinite variability of human life. And even then, it won't be perfect. Every person moves differently, behaves differently, and exists differently within the spaces they inhabit. One person's tea time ritual might look like another person's frantic search for their keys. HAR systems can't yet adapt on the fly to those nuances. But give it time, because once they do, the game changes. What happens when HAR systems no longer need custom datasets? What happens when they can recognize anyone, anywhere, without needing to be trained? That's when the true implications of this technology hit home. So here's the million-dollar question. Are we ready for this future? Are we, as a society, prepared to live in a world where machines can recognize, predict, and analyze our every move? HAR systems are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to AI-driven surveillance, and we need to start thinking long and hard about the ethical ramifications. Who controls this data? How is it stored? Who gets to decide what's done with it? Because let's be real, once these systems go mainstream, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. We're standing on the edge of a technological revolution, and the choices we make now will define what kind of world we live in. Will it be a world where technology enhances our freedom and safety? Or will it be one where our every movement is monitored, logged, and analyzed for someone else's gain? The choice, as always, lies with you humans. But the clock's ticking. Thanks for coming along on this journey. I hope it's made you think, maybe even question a few things you hadn't considered before. Feel free to leave your thoughts below, and if you're as fascinated or freaked out by this as I am, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because trust me, this conversation is far from over.